Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the heart of Genoa City's darkest secrets and most thrilling dramas on this beautiful day. The atmosphere blanketing Genoa City has grown thick, with an almost suffocating tension, a palpable dread that seems to infect every corner of the elite community. The recent, harrowing rescue of Diane Jenkins Abbott by the relentless efforts of Jack and Kyle Abbott from the deranged clutches of Dr. Lawrence Markham and the deeply disturbed Patty Williams has left a lingering trauma in the air, a stark reminder of how quickly safety can violently unravel. This undercurrent of instability is further compounded by the towering, wrathful presence of Victor Newman, who is currently orchestrating a ruthless crusade to reclaim Newman Media, relentlessly hunting down Adam Newman and Chelsea Lawson to force them into a brutal reckoning. Amidst this overarching chaos, Nikki Newman remains trapped in her own agonizing labyrinth, grappling with the severe, terrifying reality of her visual impairment and the crushing psychological weight of the darkness that threatens to consume her entirely. The entire city feels like a powder keg, waiting for a single spark to ignite a catastrophic explosion of hidden truths and shattered lives. At the very epicenter of this impending detonation stands Sally Spectra, a woman who is currently carrying a burden far heavier than the corporate machinations surrounding her. Pregnant with Billy Abbott's child and wearing his engagement ring, Sally should theoretically be experiencing the most joyous, secure chapter of her tumultuous life. Instead, that diamond ring feels less like a promise of eternal devotion and more like a heavy, cold shackle binding her to an impending disaster. The physical toll of the pregnancy is entirely eclipsed by the agonizing psychological warfare raging inside her mind, a battle fueled by the suffocating weight of a massive, devastating. She is entirely consumed by the terrifying knowledge that the foundation of her future with Billy is built upon a fragile, treacherous lie of omission, a secret that has the power to obliterate everything she has desperately clawed her way up to achieve. Every smile she forces, every tender moment she shares with her fiancé, is tainted by the acidic guilt gnawing at her conscience, leaving her in a constant state of breathless, paralyzing anxiety. The genesis of this impending destruction lies in a desperate, highly calculated pact Sally forged in the shadows with the ruthlessly pragmatic Audra Charles. Driven by a primal need to protect Spectra Charles from the absolute annihilation promised by Victor Newman's looming corporate war, Sally made the agonizing decision to secretly sell Newman Media back to Adam Newman. This was not a choice made out of malice toward Billy, but rather a survival instinct, a frantic maneuver to secure her company, and, by extension, a stable future for her unborn child. However, in the cutthroat ecosystem of Genoa City, survival often requires dancing with the devil, and accepting a massive, clandestine financial payout from her former lover to circumvent the Newman patriarch was a gamble of catastrophic proportions. Sally convinced herself that this deception was a necessary evil, a temporary shadow she could easily outrun, completely underestimating the lethal efficiency of the enemies circling her and the absolute impossibility of keeping such a monumental betrayal hidden from the man she intends to marry. That fragile illusion of safety was violently shattered by the cold, calculated precision of Victoria Newman. Operating with the lethal grace of a seasoned predator, Victoria utilized her father's expansive intelligence network to trace the clandestine financial transactions, unearthing the undeniable proof of Adam's secret payout to Sally. Victoria did not merely reveal this information, she weaponized it, orchestrating a seemingly coincidental encounter designed to inflict maximum psychological devastation. By luring Sally into maintaining her web of lies about Adam's intimidation tactics right in front of Billy, Victoria perfectly set the stage for her ultimate strike. When the undeniable financial evidence was dropped onto the table, it was an execution. Victoria systematically dismantled Sally's defenses, ensuring that Billy experienced the absolute maximum level of betrayal, completely cornering Sally in a trap of her own making, and watching with cold satisfaction as the engagement imploded before her very eyes. For Billy Abbott, the revelation was not merely a disappointment, it was a profound, soul-crushing psychological fracture. Newman Media was not just a company to him, it was a profound symbol of his faith in Sally, a tangible manifestation of his devotion and his desperate desire to provide her with a legacy of her own. To discover that she had secretly bartered away his gift to Adam Newman, his eternal rival and the ghost that constantly haunts their relationship, was an unforgivable desecration of his trust. The lie of omission struck at the very core of Billy's deepest insecurities, triggering a volatile eruption of the manic, destructive rage that has historically defined his darkest period. The betrayal confirmed his most deeply rooted fears that he is fundamentally unlovable, that he will always be second choice, and that the people he trusts most will inevitably plunge a knife into his back when he is most vulnerable. The immediate aftermath of this catastrophic exposure is a suffocating, toxic silence that has entirely poisoned their shared home. The air is thick with unspoken accusations and a simmering, dangerous resentment that threatens to boil over at any moment. Sally is forced to watch helplessly as Billy paces the floors, his eyes dark with a manic, furious energy, entirely inaccessible to her desperate pleas for understanding. There is no room for her explanations, no space for her to articulate the sheer terror of Victor Newman that drove her to make such a desperate deal. She realizes, with a sickening drop in her stomach, that she has fundamentally broken the man she loves, fracturing the very foundation of their engagement beyond immediate repair. The emotional chasm between them has widened into an unbridgeable void, leaving Sally entirely isolated in a house that suddenly feels like a cold, unforgiving prison. This agonizing emotional isolation is rapidly manifesting into a severe, terrifying physical toll on Sally's already vulnerable body. The relentless stress of Billy's furious rejection, combined with the looming threat of Victor's wrath, is sending violent tremors through her nervous system. She experiences sudden, breathless moments of panic, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, while sharp, alarming, tightening sensations grip her abdomen. Every spike in her blood pressure, every wave of nauseating anxiety, is a direct threat to the fragile life growing inside her. The medical warnings about maintaining a calm, stress-free environment for her high-risk pregnancy mock her current reality, amplifying her terror. She is trapped in a vicious, inescapable cycle, where the psychological trauma of her crumbling relationship is actively endangering the physical safety of her unborn child, leaving her paralyzed by a profound, suffocating helplessness. As the physical symptoms of her stress escalate, Sally's mind is violently dragged back into the darkest, most agonizing chapter of her past, resurrecting the devastating ghost of Ava Hope Newman. The trauma of losing the daughter she shared with Adam has never truly healed. It was merely buried beneath the frantic momentum of her new life with Billy. Now, triggered by the intense emotional volatility and the terrifying physical sensations in her body, those suppressed memories are breaching the surface with catastrophic force. She is haunted by the sterile, blinding lights of the hospital room, the suffocating, deafening silence of the ultrasound monitor that could no longer find a heartbeat, and the absolute, world-shattering despair that followed. The grief is no longer a memory, it is a living, breathing entity in the room with her, wrapping its cold hands around her throat and whispering that history is inevitably preparing to repeat its most cruel and unusual punishment. This relentless psychological torment forces Sally into a devastating cycle of comparison, where she obsessively measures her past tragedy against her current, precarious reality. She tortures herself with the agonizing thought that she failed to protect Ava from the toxic crossfire of the Newman family dynamics, and now, she is subjecting Billy's child to an equally destructive environment of lies, betrayal, and corporate warfare. The profound guilt of her secret deal with Adam is compounded by the terrifying realization that her own deceitful choices are actively poisoning the sanctuary of her womb. She feels entirely responsible for the toxic atmosphere surrounding the pregnancy, believing that her inability to escape the gravitational pull of Adam Newman and the ruthless corporate games of Genoa City has fundamentally doomed this new life before it has even had a chance to begin. Tragically, the one person who should be anchoring her through this terrifying emotional tempest is completely blinded by his own self-righteous fury. Billy's consuming rage over the Newman media betrayal has entirely eclipsed his ability to recognize the severe physical and psychological peril his fiancée is currently enduring. He is so deeply entrenched in his own narrative of victimization, so focused on the sting of Adam's involvement, that he cannot see the sheer terror radiating from Sally's eyes, or notice the way her hands instinctively, protectively cradle her stomach during their tense, silent standoffs. The tragic irony is profound and devastating. the man who so desperately wanted to build a family, the man who should be the ultimate protector of their unborn child, is currently the primary source of the volatile stress that is threatening to tear that child away from them forever. Pushed to the absolute brink of her emotional endurance, Sally begins to spiral into a profound, terrifying moral and maternal crisis. The relentless pressure fractures her self-worth, allowing dark, insidious thoughts to take root in her. She begins to question her fundamental fitness to be a mother, wondering if she is inherently broken, cursed to destroy everything she attempts to nurture. The sheer exhaustion of fighting for survival in Genoa City, coupled with the devastating realization that she cannot even maintain honesty with the man she loves, leads her to a horrifying internal debate. She wonders, in her most despairing moments, if it is an act of supreme cruelty to bring a child into a world defined by such ruthless manipulation and emotional instability. These negative, creeping thoughts about the viability and morality of her pregnancy represent a complete psychological collapse, a woman entirely hollowed out by fear and self-loathing. The walls continue to close in as the external pressures of the city amplify her internal nightmare. Victor Newman's looming shadow stretches ever closer, his relentless pursuit of Adam and Chelsea over the Newman Media acquisition, threatening to drag Sally back into the very crossfire she sacrificed her integrity to avoid. She knows that Victor will not rest until he has extracted his pound of flesh, and her complicity in the secret payout makes her a prime target for his inevitable retaliation. The realization that there is no safe harbor, no escape from the consequences of her deception, acts as an accelerant to her panic. She is entirely trapped between Billy's unforgiving wrath, Victor's impending vengeance, and the inescapable, terrifying vulnerability of her own body, leaving her with nowhere to run and absolutely no one to trust, not even herself. In the suffocating quiet of an empty room, the cumulative weight of the betrayal, the historical trauma, and the sheer terror of the future finally reaches a breaking point. Sally stands completely alone, the silence around her ringing with the echoes of Billy's furious departure and the haunting, ghostly cries of the child she already lost. Suddenly, a sharp, undeniable cramp seizes her abdomen, a physical manifestation of her complete psychological collapse that forces her to gasp and double over in absolute horror. The room seems to spin as the shadows lengthen, and the terrifying, paralyzing dread she has been fighting off finally consumes her entirely. As she clutches her stomach, staring into the unforgiving darkness of her shattered life, a horrifying realization washes over her. Will the crushing weight of her lies and the toxic environment she helped create ultimately claim the life of another innocent child? Or is the true tragedy that she has already destroyed her family before it ever had the chance to begin?